What's going on, guys? Today we got a simple project we're working on. We're going to be putting this pull-up bar on the wall. So the first step in order to do this is you're going to need to find the studs, because this has to be mounted in the studs, otherwise we'll just rip right out of the drywall. So an easy way for you to find the studs is if you have an outlet, and we got lucky. If you have an electrical outlet, there has to be a stud on either the left or right of it, because the box for all the components gets mounted to a stud. So having a stud finder is also really helpful. We have one right there. But if you don't have that, you could find it if you're not afraid to drill a few holes in your wall with a small drill bit, either on the left or the right of the stud. You could drill some holes, and tiny little holes, and find the stud that way. And then once you have the stud, most houses are the studs are placed 16 inches apart, so you can just go down the line, find the studs. We've already done that, and we've started marking up the wall. We've got just a few rough marks here, as well as down here. This thing is going to be 48 inches apart, so we've got 48 inches here, and I marked off what we believe to be the outside of the stud, outside of both sides. That way we can screw directly into the center. So next, what we're going to be moving on to is we're going to be actually now measuring. We've got to figure out how high off the ground we want this, as well as then we need to draw some lines and stuff with long rulers so that everything is square. These holes are 48 inches apart from each other, so that's what we're going to be measuring. Then we'll put one bolt in the top of each, and then we will be able to hang this thing, make sure everything's right. If it looks good, we'll put the rest of the bolts in, and we're pretty much good to go. Like I said, it's a fairly simple install. We've got a little bit of a mix of tools here, just because I want to try and make it as easy as possible. So we're probably going to drill a pilot hole for the larger bolts, and we're going to level everything using squares and such, just to make sure it's perfect. But right now, once I get the hole locations figured out, we'll get back to you guys and show you what we're going to do next. All right, so we have the bar partially assembled. I just snugged up one of the bolts because we held it up against the wall so that we could try and figure out a best height, the best height that we want to sit at. So you have to keep in mind when you're mounting this or something of this style. I mean, there's definitely different brands and different styles, etc. But the height off the ground that you actually want to grab, it needs to be to the bar. So what we figured out is that we want this part of our bar to be 90 inches off the ground. And that means that we're going to measure 90 inches off the ground to this hole, and that's where we're going to put our first bolt to just make sure everything seems like it's going well. I happen to have these long metal rulers, and we did math, and we were able to figure out the center. But if you weren't to have something like that, as long as you had a tape measure and a stud finder, you could be pretty accurate on where you're putting it. So right now we're going to mark off the two holes, make sure that they're level across this way as best we can. We'll probably use that ruler from one point on the wall to another point on the wall, and then we'll put a level on the ruler, make sure it's all good. And then as long as that's good, we're gonna put two bolts in this thing, one on each side, set it up there. We won't try and pull on it or anything, but just to make sure everything looks good and it's at the right height. And then as long as that's good, we're gonna put the rest of the bolts in, and then we'll bolt up the bar, and we should be good to go. Okay, so we have our two pilot holes for these to go into the studs. I disassembled this, and I'm gonna put one in this one in the hole we talked about, and one in this one. I'm gonna disassemble this too. That way we have them both hanging there, make sure everything's right before we go drilling a bunch more holes and putting these into the wall. And then we'll test fit this up, and we should be good to go. Okay, so we just set this on here. We didn't tighten anything down. We just have one bolt in up there on each side. But as you can see, our math worked out, so it's always good when that happens. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna be using a level. We're gonna get these two sides set perfectly level. I'm gonna take that bar off before we do this. Then I'll put the rest of the bolts in, and we will bolt this up, and we should be good to go. We have everything bolted up, sturdy, checked level, square, all that good stuff. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the main bar on, tighten it up. There's two bolts here, and a washer and a nut, and then we're gonna be good to go. So we'll get that on and show you what it looks like when it's finished. All right, here we go. Everything is bolted up. and that's how it is. So pretty simple install, doesn't take too long, took us like 25-30 minutes maybe, just making sure everything was perfect because we want it to be done right. Hope this helps you. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to comment and I will try my best to respond. Thanks.